is how do people give over their freedom of being able to co-create with the land and things like that using the system of law as it is today? You know, does anybody have an opinion on that?
I mean, law is whose law? What are we talking about here?
Well, talking
Another
about
man's law, or the dream of life that we live. I mean, you know, we're not.
Well, let's talk about the laws of the system for now, and how the laws of...
They're just the law of other men and women who made it up. Are we answerable to these people? You know,
Well, some would say that we are, I suppose.
Who's making that claim? If someone comes up with the idea, and you claim that idea is yours, of course you're going to be under their law. Why make the claim?
So basically what you're saying is that if someone presents a contract to you, for instance...
You don't have to claim it.
Yeah, so you have the choice, but ultimately if you're saying yes, you know, if you sign it, for instance, you're basically agreeing...
The moment you believe that claim has power, and you start arguing for it...
to it.
The moment you claim it, whether it's through belief, whether through argument, whatever it is, the moment you claim it, it's possessed you, and you've just given your power to the person who made the claim, to the man who's made the claim. Now you're under their standing. You're now under their power, because you've accepted it. The thing is not to argue for any. Don't make a claim. If a man is acting as a police officer, issues a fine, it's his claim, it's not yours.
How would you then, how could you express that to a police officer?
Well, that's his curse. I would tell him that you just made a lie. I would say to him, do you have a higher standing than me? Are not all men equal?
Is that going to stop him from...
He may still pursue his own claim and argue and fight and do whatever he wants. But that doesn't mean that I have to process his lie, process his curse. He's made a lie. I'm not going to claim it. I'm not going to stand there and say that his claim has I'm not going to validate it. If they want to invite me into their dead world to be in their court, I'm not going to go there to be caught. Right?
But that's not going to stop him from what you're saying to him now. It's not going to stop him from forcefully taking you to prison if you don't acquiesce to his
I'll forgive him because he doesn't know what he's doing. And to take responsibility for my life, don't let him harm this body of this man. And knowing that his intention is to take this body, he's going to kidnap it, and he's going to use his force because he's got guns and weapons, whatever he's got on him. I'll go with him. But at no time am I going to accept his offer. I'm not going to claim his claim. You see, the thing is that every time another man makes a claim, you have to then ask the question: do they have a higher standing than you? Do they have power over you? Who are you answerable to? Whose law is it where these claims are coming out of? Now, to me, they're not my laws. They're not my claims. I'm not in their world. He may see me on the lands that he claims are the roads and highways and byways and whatever they claim as state property, and that they're enforcing the rules and regulations of the state through their statutes. I'm still the living creator journeying across the dream of life. If he doesn't want to recognize the living creator of the man that I am, that's his problem, not mine. However, he wants to kidnap this body because he's trying to make me take responsibility for his claim. What he's saying is that this man has some kind of intellectual property that I represent, that I represent. Now, obviously, my parents didn't know this because they weren't taught it, but they created a birth certificate, and they gave a name to that birth certificate, and the Crown owns that intellectual property. Now, what I'm doing in this work is that I do not claim that property. It's not my intellectual property. When the police officer is issuing a claim through any fine that they choose to create, right, that's their claim with that intellectual property. But because I'm not the owner of that intellectual property, I'm going to tell them, you should go to the owner of that intellectual property and take it up with them. I don't own it. It's not mine. I don't own the birth certificate. I don't own the copyright. It's not my property. And that's the problem of the Freeman movement, most of them. People are arguing and fighting for these claims. Now, the thing is, when you strip it all back, these claims are lies. Because these claims are based on statute laws that don't have any place in natural law, which is all about do no harm. And when you harm somebody, like for instance, if I physically come and harm another man or woman, obviously that's that party's been injured by me. And I'm going to have to take responsibility, be accountable for my actions. But when people are making up laws out of thin air where no one's been harmed, and there's no injured party, this is all to do with nonsense. So what I would do, I will take the invitation to invite the living creator of the man that I am into their court, into their world, into their dead world, which is their court system. And I'll go and talk with them, but I'll ask them, is there anyone here who's the owner of the intellectual property of this person that's been claimed here? Because I make no claim over that property.
When you say person, you're talking about your birth certificate or the intellectual property that is being represented in the court.
They're making the claim.
So even
I don't make that claim. I don't own that birth certificate. I don't own that intellectual property.
is this the same though? Because you're out of the system now. Is this the same for the majority who are still in the system and have the birth certificate?
Well, it's difficult for them because they're still using their intellectual property, which is money. They're using their roads and highways and bikes because they are representing the intellectual property of the person that is the name that they stand for, which is contracted in every area of the system. Electricity, gas, mortgages, credit cards, bank accounts, money, etc.
A person isn't the living creator. A person is a fiction created by the system, which is intellectual property. You know,
Well,
living creator is the name.
We're the ones, what they've done, they gave us the offer of the name, but because we weren't conscious at the time, because we were little babies, we weren't conscious that we were actually accepting that name. Because under the stewardship of our parents, they're supposed to protect us from that, but they didn't protect us, and they didn't give us full disclosure. We grew up that there was this person being created, which is not us, that we have to represent for. So now we're now representing this intellectual property that's not me. This Arthur Cristian, which is, well, this is, you know, it was Arthur Nassia's Buddha Das originally. Now it's Arthur Cristian during the 1980s when I changed it because of sales marketing reasons. But Arthur Cristian is not me. That intellectual property is not me. But we think that it is us, and so we have to represent that intellectual property. When the police officer makes the claim, they make the claim to that person that we're representing. When you go to the court, you walking into your court to represent the fiction that is Arthur Cristian, because the police officer is making the claim that Arthur Cristian went 80 kilometres an hour in a 40 kilometre speed zone. Well, Arthur Cristian parked in a no standing zone. Now the fact is that the police officer made a claim. Now the difference here is that because I'm the living creator of the man that I am, and I no longer claim ownership over that intellectual property that he's claiming that I am. So I'm happy to go into their dead world, which is like bringing light. It's like turning a torch on, and you're going into the dark cave. And I'm going to turn the light on. And what I'm doing, I'm going to go into their court because they've invited the living creator to come amongst them. I'm going to let them know that the living creator of the living man that I am is amongst the dead. And that they're going to recognize the living creator of this man. And I'm going to ask them, are you here to do harm to this living man that I am? Is there another man here who has a higher standing than me? Are not all men equal? If they have a claim, then bring forward the claim. Who's the one who's made the claim?
So how do you actually get into the court without representing yourself as the legal fiction in the first place?
Well, if you get, in this case, I haven't been allowed to go, well, they won't allow the living creator of this man to go back into their courts anymore. Obviously for many reasons. One, I don't have driver's license, birth certificates. I don't have mortgages and contracts anymore. I don't have Medicare. I don't have anything. I don't even have passport. I've got nothing anymore. I mean, that was faded out from 2006 till now. So there isn't any intellectual property in there. So if I go in there under the assumption they think that intellectual property is still me, I'll go there to help them bring remedy, to bring a cure to this misunderstanding, because they've also got the wrong party. They're looking for the intellectual property, the owner of that intellectual property. I'm going to tell them, you should go to the owner of that intellectual property, take up the matter of this claim that you have with them. That's where it should be dealt with, because I'm not the owner of that intellectual property. And I'm not going to make the claim. See, I don't go to court to argue over their claims. I wish I knew this before we started all this, you know, but obviously I woke up during along the way. So you don't argue for this. You do not argue for anything. That's their problem, not yours. The thing is this, that every lie is a curse. The claim that they make is a lie. The whole system is a lie that they're representing. The basis that their titles gives them authority and power over another man is a lie in itself. Now these are curses. What I do is I bounce all the curse back on them and I make them fully responsible for the curse that they've created. And I give them no escape. I say to them, any harm you do to the living creator of this man, that curse comes back upon you. It is unbreakable. It comes upon your family, your children, your loved ones, and your friends. And there it gets processed and amplifies by the moment until you make it whole.
I can understand how that would scare somebody, but that could also come across as, you know, a bit of a heebie-jeebie or something like that to most people. So can you explain what you mean when you say the whole thing is a lie and the whole thing is a curse? You maybe start with explaining what you mean.
Experience the effects of it. If anyone wants to come and harm another man, I'm not going to process their curse. You see, when you accept another man's lie, you've actually now taken on the lie.
So they're lying because they're making a claim that they have a higher standing than you by trying to enforce a particular statute or law upon them. Through representing the person or whatever intellectual property it is that they created. So what about a curse? Then how does the curse come into it?
That is the curse you just talked about. It's a lie. The curse is a lie.
The curse is pretty much the person or the fiction that we're representing that isn't us.
It's the information they're asking us to give our energy to. They're trying to get me to process the curse. I won't accept that offer. I let them take on their own lie and let them process it and make sure it doesn't go to anyone else. So it lives with them because I am I'm the living creator of the man. They don't have a higher standing than me, and I'm not there to injure them, but I'm going to, at the same time, I'm going to make them accountable and fully responsible for their actions. So through my say-so, the curse stays with them. And they can have it. They created it. It's theirs. They can enjoy it and live with it. The only thing is that I've made it clear to them that it stays with them and it amplifies with them while they resist, while they pursue through avenues of arrogance and ignorance and righteousness, through enforcement and any forms of force they want to use. It amplifies and amplifies and amplifies by the moment. With every breath they breathe in and out, it is amplifying.
Okay, so we've been thinking, what is a curse? Is it mystical, or just what is it in general? How do we let go of the baggage of a curse?
Stop believing it. Stop believing the information. See, a curse is a lie. A lie is a curse. A lie is a thought. The information in that thought. If you imagine a thought as a bubble, all the information that is in that thought that is a lie is a curse. Now when the men and women of the system, the Freemasons, the Satanists, who took on the dream, the information, that they have a higher standing than other men, women, children. It doesn't matter what the justifications are. It doesn't matter exactly what led them to do what they're doing. The fact that they feel that they have to intercede in the affairs of man and put themselves in a position of authority where they rule other men and women. That information, doesn't matter what the information is that does that. All of it is a lie. It's a curse. Now, the ships that invaded on these lands, that came onto these lands, and all the invasions of all the tribes of man, ever since this rubbish started, long ago, in their recorded history, the thought that they were thinking, that made up the way of life, that had them perform like that, is a curse. So, what I'm saying about the ships, when they arrived and they invaded all these lands, after they did their reconnaissance and they spent time researching all the tribes and documented it through the botanists and the scientists and all that stuff that happened, and all the missionaries, etc. And then they invaded the lands and they devastated all the tribes, and then they rewrote all the history to teach the new history for what remained of the children of those tribes and the generations to come. So they would be in the image of the invaders and not in the true tongue of the history of their tribes, passed down through word of mouth. It's now passed down through books in the recorded history, ABC 1, 2, 3 books of the satanic world. When these ships invaded, They brought the treasure chests off their ships. These treasure chests contain the books that are the tools that they would use to force the lie upon everyone. Right? Which is the system. The system that is the religions that we believe. That is the philosophies that we carry out. That is the system of law that we operate under. That is the political process. Every one of them is an administration.
But there was no capitalism when they brought the boats.
Wherever there was man forcing his standing on another man as a system, if the tribes on those lands had a king and a queen who were putting themselves on a higher standing than another man, that was a lie. And that's a system. And there would be a system, a belief system that upheld that information, that had everyone in the tribe acquiesce to that system and comply. They had to comply to that system. Right? So I don't think there were many tribes on earth where we had true freedom, where there was no such thing as kings and queens, that we didn't have messiahs and we didn't have popes and we didn't have lamas and high priests and all that kind of nonsense. We had community, people together, working together as a team effort, and collectively, through love, working together. Whatever remained of that was devastated. Those tribes would have just become part of the mishmash of all of us today, caught up in the systems that we're now believing in. What I'm getting at, the system that we live under on this land that we now call Australia, the Commonwealth of Australia, it has a political system. It has a legal system, right? Which is a judicial system. And then it has a spiritual system as well. Each one of them is a center of processing curse. It's a center of curse. It's an administration of curses. They administer the curse, each one of them. And collectively, they all administer the curse for the liar, the man who made up this lie. And they're all living the lie, and everything about the system is a lie. Right? So,
what does the liar have to gain?
They gain nothing. It's a fantasy for them as well. They're not, because there's no rewards they're gaining by the lie. They may think they're getting earthly rewards by all the riches that they gain through the rape, pillage and plunder. And all the men and women who are acting as slaves, giving their energy to them so they can be sitting in a world of comfort and power. But that is not a reward. That is a false idol. They're actually committing spiritual suicide, every single one of them.
So you're not talking about a duality of good and evil, that an evil person or something created this lie and does it for any particular reason. Would you be... They're
deluded. The lie is a shield of delusion that keeps them enclosed in it. It's a prison that keeps them stuck in the lie with no way out unless they give up the lie.
It's come out of their conditioning.
It's part of the conditioning which they got from their parents and all those that they were around them, that the system that educated them. But the thing is, there's no afterlife reward. This afterlife is a lie. There is no afterlife reward for these people. Nothing. It's all garbage. There is no afterlife. Afterlife. I mean, is not life life? Is there something after life? More than life? Is living created more than that? That's nonsense. It's garbage. What we are doing here is representing characters in a fairy tale, doing harm to who we really are, to those we love, and to the dream of life that we're part of, and severing all our connections to it until there's nothing left and we're dead and it's all over. We're zooming out from the dream of life. All the thinking that makes us zoom out, all the thinking that has us do harm to anything of the dream of life, that has us remove the consciousness, the sensory reality of the life form, the information of life, of living created in the life form, that causes us to do that, through whatever the intention may be, whether it's through power, glory, through building dead things, whatever it is, that is a curse. That is a lie. So the whole system is a lie within a lie. What I suspected happened, these priests of long ago knew the consequences of their actions. And they tried to deflect the lie and get others to process it. So they directed the lie into animals and tried to get the animals to jump off the cliff. or they would end up developing sacrifices and sacrificing animals to try to get the animals to process the curse of their making. Then they got into this ritual sacrificing of virgins and taking hearts out and all that out of man and all the abuse, right? And then they came up with a monetary system which is called currency, which is the current of the curse, and get man to process the lie through money, through currency. Because all money is a curse. Because the whole system of money is governed by the tiny few who have all the power, who oversee the currency, the system of commerce. It has to, every man-made system of commerce needs slaves and rulers. That is a lie. Both those who act as a ruler and those who live the lie as a slave. That is all a curse.
Some people might see being a part of a system as a collaborative effort, and that it doesn't require slavery because you willingly give yourself over to it.
That's still harm, and that doesn't matter how deluded they may be to justify that. They're actually doing harm. They're doing harm to the trees, to the flowers, to the plants. They're doing harm to other men and women. They're forcing men and women to give up their uniqueness because have to be captured and put onto the conveyor belt and put through factory planet Earth to be moulded out of the sameness mold, so they could then represent the titles of the careers and courses that come out of university that come with titles and certificates. So
how do you define harm done to a tree or a plant? You know?
By going to the tree and doing something that goes against the nature of the tree, forcing the tree to be something else that isn't, by chopping it down and turning it into paper, which is now a dead corpse. The paper can't do anything anymore. The paper has no gift to the dream of life. They're talking about the system paper.
Yeah. So, into the curses, a lie is a curse. A curse is an unbacked claim that has no substance behind it. And the cursed are those who believe or make a claim.
Well, the curse has a backing because someone's made the claim. But they don't take responsibility for it. So they pass the responsibility onto someone else. They want you to make the claim.
Isn't the curse still all of the baggage, though, that we take on with us that many of us aren't aware of?
Yeah. All of it's a curse. Doesn't matter where in the system you are, you're processing the lie. So in returning the curse, we do this through, in, like you were explaining before, in going into court, in returning the curse. But we also do this when we let go, or we don't give energy to these harmful thoughts, feel these harmful feelings, and let basically these harmful feelings rule us and give energy to these stories. Yeah, which is all the negative, destructive emotions we feel. When you do that, you're processing the lie. You're processing the curse. But when you do it with love, and you do it with wholeness and forgiveness, then you don't take on the curse. So you're bouncing it back. The offer they've given you to take it on, because they're angry doesn't mean you have to be angry.
So what you're saying is every time we choose, say for instance, a negative thought or feeling rises in us.
We have the choice.
We have the choice to either
take
give
on
energy,
the curse.
take on the curse by giving energy to it, thinking or feeling it, or
bounce it back,
or bouncing it back by
choosing
to feel happier, or choosing to think more happier, brighter, pure thoughts.
I just caught myself jumping in on you too. I'm sorry, I apologise for that. I shouldn't be doing that. But yeah, that's true. That's right. You just don't. You don't have to be like them.
Is a lie mystical then?
No, there's nothing mystical about it. It's just simply a consequence of our actions. Just being conscious of what the choices we've made. If you buy the lie, you're going to process the lie. You become the lie.
Could you give a good example?
Well, if they tell you that gravity exists as a child, okay, and you grow up believing that gravity exists, and then you realise that gravity doesn't exist because there ain't no life form called gravity for you to go and see and talk to let you know what gravity's all about. And then you find out that other men and women made up the idea of gravity, and you have to go to another man and woman to tell you about gravity. Right?
Well, what about if I just drop an apple towards the ground?
Well, that's not gravity. The representation, like a man is looking through a telescope or a microscope. The information that he's thinking and feeling with what he's looking at is not coming from the life form or the picture that she's observing. It's coming from the thoughts of other men and women who've told him how to think and feel with what they're looking at. So the information you're saying, oh, that's gravity, you're representing another man sort of told you that. What you need to do is talk to the apple, and talk to the air, and talk to everything else there, and listen to it. Let it tell you what's going on.
What language would I have to speak to the apple?
Sensory, not talk language. You have to sense it. Sit there and contemplate and observe and feel the information, the instinctive information that comes through sense, through intuition, perception. This is our true language, our true tongue. And let it tell you what it's doing. Otherwise, you're representing another man's thought, which is what makes us fall. And that's a curse. Now we're processing the lie. And we're passing the lie on to our children and telling them that gravity exists. We're telling them that Alice in Wonderland exists. And we teach them to represent Alice in Wonderland, to give the impression Alice in Wonderland does exist in the thoughts of the children who are thinking the fairy tale, who then grow up to teach their children to believe that nonsense. Passing on the books and the stories while they're sitting on the laps while they're reading the story. This is peddling a lie. The idea that the system exists and the system of money exists is a lie.
So even then, intellect, or what they call intellect, logic and reason, so to speak, logic and reason.
Well, they're two different things there.
They're actually, they don't exist.
Intellect has nothing to do with reason. Because when you're reasoning, you're contemplating and gaining the information, the wholeness of the picture of what you're observing. Intellect is where you're using thoughts that have no consciousness in them. This is what Satanists do. They worship the intellect. They worship the shadow world. They love the reflection. What you're doing is that we're representing their thoughts, their ideas, with what we're looking at, what we touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see, which we touched on in part 1 and part 2 of the Dream of Life. That is the worship of the intellect. When all these people running around believing in science, and science is true, they're actually lost in their intellect. But the intellect does not exist. It's like if you say to them that it exists, like the mind exists, or the ego exists, or the person exists, or the individual exists, where is it? Let's cut our brains open, let's cut our body, let's go looking for it. Hello? We open it up. Hello, intellect, where are you? Hello, mind, are you there? These are thoughts that we are representing that have no life. They stay with us because it needs us to keep giving our energy to those thoughts, because otherwise they fade away. So we have to believe in those images. That is worshipping the intellect. They're shadows.
So the intellect runs, or is programmed, so to speak, by the lie. So the only way to gain truth would be to use our sensory language.
A shadow needs light. So the shadow only exists. The shadow is the satanic world. We're talking about the Freemasonic world. The shadow needs a living man to believe the lie, to cast the shadow. Without the light of man, the life force energy of man giving to that thought can't be sustained. We can't. Alice in Wonderland can't exist unless there's a little mirror to represent it. The lies of science, the lies of religion, the lies of law, the lies of statutes that the police and the courts force on you, and the government through all the bills they pass through their parliaments. None of that can happen unless there's a living man to give its energy to it. It's just unfortunate that so many of living man are the living dead. They're not living.
So what you're saying is that science wouldn't exist if we all stopped thinking, or if we all stopped believing in science, science wouldn't exist.
How about... Sorry, Anna.
Okay.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
How about, can you bring forward living creator, or can you bring forward...
I am living creator.
Can you bring forward the priest?
I can't bring forward a priest because I'm not a priest. I don't claim to act on behalf of a priest. If another man wants to come forward and call himself priest, is that his first name? Is his name Priest John? Is that his first name? Or is he John Smith acting as priest of the Roman Catholic Church? That's two different things going on here now. He's now representing a fiction. And those who believe in the title that he's representing will put themselves under his standing. Then he has some kind of authority based on the information contained in the lie that he's representing.
So what about,
that's a curse.
What about Arthur, this man that you speak about, that you proposed, created this shadow world, which you spoke about in part 1 of the dream, and I think maybe part 2, the dream of life as well. Some people might say, well, can you bring forth this man?
Yeah, every thought's created by a man. No thought can not be created by man.
So ultimately,
let me finish. Every thought that is a construct is a dead corpse, right? A dead corpse is like a dead body. It can't walk, talk, think, feel, poo, wee, negotiate, contract. It can't do anything. That information, which is the basis of science, this nutcase made up, it needed a man to create it. So there was a man, a founder of these thoughts, of this information. Didn't just come out of nowhere and suddenly we're thinking it. It took a man to make it up. But because this information is not life sustainable, there's no life form existing in the dream of life. You can't go to this information like you can go to a horse or a leaf on a tree or the bird and actually contemplate on this information that is science or law or statute law or Christianity. That doesn't exist, that information. Now that information is a dead corpse. Now the system is a dead corpse. The whole system and everything in the system is a dead corpse. It can't walk, talk, think, feel, negotiate, contract, contemplate. It can't do anything. It needs the living man to perform for that dead corpse. We have to do the walking, talking, thinking, feeling, negotiating, contracting, etc. of that dead corpse. The dead corpse of science, the dead corpse of mathematics, the dead corpse of alphabet languages, the dead corpse of statute law, the dead corpse of religions, right? Because it's a dead corpse and has no life, it needs an organization. It needs to be organized so the performance can occur to keep up the scam of its presence amongst us. That's why we have a system to keep upholding the lie. This dead corpse cannot happen by chance. It needs our intention to keep performing for the lie.
So the curse needs the cursed.
Yes, to perform for it and represent it. So
a lie needs liars.
It needs a liar to be the liar. Exactly. So and all dead corpses, which remember, gravity is a dead corpse. It doesn't exist. It needs another man to represent that lie. Statute law does not exist. The power of another man who, under the assumption they have higher standing than another man, that is a lie. It's a lie. Even though we may be conned into accepting that through belief in whatever we've been forced to believe in, that makes us acquiesce and comply to that lie, because we were not given full disclosure of the lie before we entered the lie, to perform that lie. So because we've entered into the dead world to perform for the dead corpse, we have to pick up science and carry it around and walk for it and talk for it and think for it and do everything for it, as we do for the system, as we do for the statute world. This requires organization. It's contrived. That is the proof that there was a man who made this up. This did not happen by chance. There was a founder who thought this out. It doesn't matter exactly what his name was. The fact is, it was a man who made it up. And he taught his children, and his friends and associates, who then taught their children and their friends and associates, and passed it on. They became the secret schools of Mystery Babylon. They became all the secret societies, which is unfolded in all the Freemasonic orders and lodges today. Because all Freemasons, with all their regalia, are priests at the high levels, and they're all the masters of fiction, of fantasy. Their job is to create fantasy and get man to fall into the fantasy world so that we would represent this dead corpse that they've created. And because they are the power behind, they're the master puppeteers behind that, we worship the constructs that they claim ownership of that intellectual property. So in giving our power to Jesus, in giving our power to Jesus, giving our power to the God of the Christians, we're giving our power to the priests who administer Jesus on behalf of their God on earth. Really what we're doing, we're giving power to the men, women, and children who claim the highest standing of all other men, women, and children. The same thing in the law. And they call it common law. The common law of slaves. The common law of the sinners. You are democked under the race of the sinners. Under democracy. You're stitched up in the constitution that you call Australia, the Commonwealth of Australia. That's what's going on. Nothing else is going on. You can't bring forward common law as a living life form. You can only bring forward another man, woman and child to represent it. It's a dead corpse. You can't bring forward trial by jury. The same thing. You can't bring forward democracy. These are liars. What happens now? As we have fallen into the lie that is the system, we have all become, how would you explain it? We've all been discriminated because most of us cannot compete in the system, because most of us don't have a brain to deal with the mathematics that is commerce. Many of us do not like to manipulate to make money out of other men, women and children. Most of us do not like to harm. So because of our natural attributes, the kind of artistic character attributes that make up the man that we are discriminated against. So we become the garbage workers. We become the street cleaners. We become the junk of the people in the system who do all the crap work. While the manipulators and the power players who love working with money and love the idea of power end up with all the power in the system. And we call this common law. And we call this a democracy. But what really is happening, every man, woman and child who's been discriminated against has been removed from the land. Has been removed from taking responsibility from the land they're standing on here. And now they have other men and women and children ruling them on that land. And they're a renter of that land through the Land Titles Office. Because the Land Titles Office has got nothing to do with the land. The Land Titles Office is dealing with the intellectual property that you're renting. And you have authorised representatives who handle that paperwork behind the scenes, who have all the power. Or other priests, the same people who deal behind the Roman Catholic Church, behind the Jesuits, behind the Church of England, the Crown. It's the same garbage. The whole thing is a scam. What's really going on is we're all man on the land, being uprooted from land to worship dead corpses, so we give up our power away to these people to rule us over the land we stand on, so that we're a slave.
And so Arthur...
And then they've got to provide a system to keep that going, to keep us as slaves. And that's what this is all about. And what I'm here for is to put an end to this rubbish. Enough is enough. Stop it. Stop giving it energy. Stop performing for the dead corpses world. Stop living the curse. Stop processing the curse. The reason why the monetary system exists is to give our power away to the tiny few who own the intellectual property of money and commerce. In doing that, they will tell you how to think and feel.
Is that the Jews?
No. They were babies too. They've been used and set up as the scapegoats. They were tribes like the rest of us. They were invaded and brainwashed. The Jews are not responsible. They were just like every other man, woman and child. The people who are responsible are the Levite priests. Any man, woman and child who uses remote control, remote projection and remote viewing to project thoughts in your brain and get you to believe that it's your brain creating it and force you to create that world so you will represent that dead corpse.
So if somebody can do that, how does then somebody have the power to stop that?
By becoming conscious of this and stop giving our energy to it and stop teaching others about it like I'm doing right now and have been doing for the last 6 years, to bring to awareness that this is what's going on and this is the real agenda.
So what you were saying, Arthur, in saying that, basically, because we have been taken from the land and we're all contributing to this system, which is the dead corpse, we are basically, in doing that, we are forgetting about our responsibility or our duty to the land, and as a consequence, it is being destroyed as we speak.
Because we've forgotten who we really are. We've forgotten what we're really part of, and we've forgotten our true purpose of the dream of life. Yeah. That's explained in part 1 and part 2 of the dream of life that we've created already. While we live for the system, while we worship the constructs takes all our energy and goes into the system that serves the system. While we are so compromised and we keep using the prosthetics of the system, doesn't matter what those prosthetics may be, no matter what man-made constructs we have created, with all our good intention, while we keep thinking that we can use motor cars and keep using steel and plastic and all these things that we've done to destroy nature, an element of the energy we give to those prosthetics, or in fact more than an element, a vast amount of our energy still goes to serve the system. It doesn't go to the dream of life. It gets hijacked, gets detoured. You're like on a road journeying on the highway of life. Our thoughts, when we're thinking the dream of life, Every thought we create in the dream of life that inspires us to be the man we are through the dream of life takes us through the dream of life, and everywhere in the dream of life we're co-creating and expanding the dream. But because we've been hijacked by the system and we're thinking and feeling their thoughts, these satanic thoughts, we're no longer driving on the highway of life. We're now detoured off into a cul-de-sac, which is now a satanic world, a satanic thought, an avenue. And we're trapped in there, giving our energy to this prosthetic, this construct, which takes all our life force energy to the system and serves the system and not into the dream of life. So even though we are recycling, as we've shown in part 2 of the dream of life, we're going to recycle everything. It's still our intention is to continue withdrawing until we are no longer using any plastic and steel, because we're not manufacturing it anymore and we're not destroying it anymore, and we've buried it all into the ground, and we now have returned our bodies back to the pristine living body of the living man that we are, that does not need any prosthetics, doesn't need any constructs, nothing. Doesn't need air conditioning, doesn't need heaters, does not need fire, doesn't need anything anymore, because we have got the full responsibility in this body that we've taken responsibility for. So again, let's zoom back out. We've got to stop representing dead corpses. We've got to stop acting as a dead man for a dead thing. Let's be the living man in the living world. Let's stop being the living dead. Because when you're the living dead, you are cursed and you're processing curses. Stop getting sucked into all the Freeman sovereignty movements. All of it is garbage. It does not work. You're giving your power away to those who you have acquiesced to, who have the power. When you serve your paperwork to anyone in the system, you're saying there's someone out there who's got greater power than you. Regardless. And you're asking them to rule you still. Remember, they invaded all the lands. They terrorized all the tribes. They decimated all the tribes. Then they brainwashed what remained. And we are those children who've been brought up in this decimated world. And all these lies they fed us, that is the system that we worship, that has us represent the dead corpse, are prescriptive medication to keep us dumbed down and stupid, to keep us sedated. But if some of us wake up from this scam, from this lie, and we stick our head up above the fog of this nonsense, we start to see force. The very force that invaded the lands. These are the children we're looking at now, of their ancestors who invaded these lands. These children are representing the lie of their ancestors, as we are representing the lie as their slaves. So we're dealing with force here. And the whole thing of force is a curse. So anyone who's a Christian is living a curse. You are cursed, you are a sinner. Of course, because you're living a lie. Because Christianity does not exist. It's a lie. They made it up. There's not a life form anywhere. There's no living creative presence in the life. The thought of God is not God. You have to represent the thought of God. That is a reflection. That's a satanic shadow. You are now in the shadows of the satanic world. Living creator is present to the presence of life, and is present to every thought that is present to the presence of life, which means that we can touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, and see that thought, that life form. That's where our true power is. That's where the living creator is. That's where the truth is. Stop it. Stop giving energy to the lie.
So, a curse suggests some type of ill effect or some ill fate bestowed upon that or which is cursed. So how does the curse affect the cursed, so to speak? How does the curse affect those, the original creator of the lie or the curse?
It will be processed the way they choose it. They just can't escape it. Whether it's an earthquake, whether it comes as a lightning strike, whether it comes as a heart attack, car accident, whether it comes as the house burns down, however it happens, they create it according to their own way of thinking.
So their impure thoughts will bounce back to them.
Everything
in their own
back
creation.
Exactly.
So could you say that a curse, when talking about curses and lies, could you say that a curse is pretty much...
A curse is a lie.
A curse is a lie. Could you basically say that a curse is something that it's informational, it's thoughts that are that are distorted because they're not pure and sincere. They're not thought out because through the pure and sincere intention. They've got ill or harmful intentions.
Well, the assumption is that that one man has more higher standing than another man. That's a lie. If the fact that all these lands were invaded by these people and they brought the system with them, they educated all the dumbed down and all those that dragged the land to believe in this nonsense. The fact that statutes and laws and democracy and constitution and even trial by jury and all these things, they're all lies, because we are not answerable. We, the living creator, are not answerable to anyone, except when we do harm. And we start doing harm, blatantly doing harm, and we actually call in, then we are accountable for our actions, and that has to be made whole amongst all those who are injured. So if we're part of a tribe and we've injured some of the tribe, it's the tribe that comes together to resolve it together in wholeness. One, how did the tribe not see the harm in the man, which is in their making, in their image, in the dream that they've created as the tribe, and not see this coming? That this man would turn it into be someone, or the meaning of man, woman or child, would start creating impure and sincere thoughts to turn around and do harm amongst them. Why didn't they see this and stop it then, before it became the harm? And secondly, the fact is that through shame, we together, the tribe would come together to make whole that harm. So all the tribe learns together from this mistake, because the injury is not just the very man who caused it, it's the whole tribe, because we're all bonded. You see? So, one bad apple is a bad apple for the whole tribe in that way. So the whole tribe comes together to resolve the problem amongst all of them, because we're all equally responsible.
So we're all, just for one example, we're all in Australia, especially in the tribe that lives here today collectively is in a great deal amount of shame because no one's taken any responsibility for the harm done to the man in the land previous. In that, talking about responsibility, with any sort of interactions or connections that you've had with the law throughout all your travels and things like that, have you ever actually found any methods or anyone that will take responsibility or ways to take responsibility for your own self within those systems?
Well, in terms of the original man on the land, man is the original man on the land. We're all of man. So unless they bring forward a God to back the claim that they're the first ones on the land, that they have some intellectual property rights over a piece of land, because it requires a belief system to make that claim. And you have to bring forth the one who's going to take responsibility for that intellectual property, be it called sovereignty or inheritance, or whatever we want to make the claim. So, and we know that they can't do that. So what it comes down to is the fact that we've all been compromised because our ancestors have all been uprooted from land somewhere along the way. And because of the migration, because of the invasions of all these lands, all these tribes were invaded and uprooted and ransacked and, terrified and, ridiculed and abused and raped and, all the rape, pillage and plunder, all that stuff that happened. We are the offcast of all this. We're all the residue of all these things and all along the way. So there's no such thing as an original man on the land, because all man comes from man. So now that we're all waking up now in this middle of a nightmare, amongst on this land, that some call Arnhem land or Gondwana land, or you want to call it in the fiction Australia. What are we going to do with like people like us, like Fiona and I, and we represent probably a good 8, 10, 12, maybe 14 million of us. We're not capable of going back to the original land because we don't know what those original lands are. Because we're going to have to go right back through the recorded history, and that goes into thousands of years, to the original land where we came from. Now, even the traditional man on the land now we call the Aboriginal, he's not original on this land either. There's already vast evidence that there was a white man on this land that was murdered. There was a genocide done to these white men by the blackfellas. And there are traditional elders who've talked to me about this stuff. And the evidence is there. And some of these white people are still alive in Western Australia. Now, what happens to these people? Who are they? And then all the wars amongst the blackfellas. They used to go, not all of them, many of them were very peaceful, but they had a lot of wars and battles amongst each other, and they used to kill each other as well over land and over women and stealing women and stealing things. They had a lot of their own problems as well. And this happened in most countries, including the American Indians. these problems occur, generally speaking. So what I'm saying is that we've got to get past back from all that. We're going to go way back now to back to man. And that man is the living creator. And now we're all woken up as man today, compromise, and together we're going to have to solve this problem. And we're going to have to work this out together without fighting over land anymore. And we've got to get past the first and the last and the rich and the poor and the haves and the have-nots. We're now going to work together as man, as team players now and solve this problem. Because what are we going to do with the rest? Are we going to send us all to Mars? If 8, 12, 14, 16 million of us are all forced to move off this land because the traditional elders of the land claim this land is their land and we're all invaders, where are we going to go? Have we got a rocket ship take us to Mars? Is there a colony that we can go and move to? Do you want to take on that responsibility of all that harm's going to happen to us? What I'm saying is, I'm willing to take on all the responsibility of all the harm that's been done to all your ancestors and to you today. I'm willing to be fully accountable, and I am fully accountable. And my wife Fiona is also fully accountable to make right all the harm that's been done to you. But I'm asking you to take full responsibility for all the harm that's been done to us and to all our ancestors, including your ancestors, where we've all been uprooted all the way back before this rubbish started. Now that's what I'm saying, because otherwise you guys are going to be living a curse as well. All the blackfellas will continue the curse. Well, while you argue for the intellectual property, you've got some kind of ownership, some first man on the land status. That's a lie. Because you'll have no one to back your claim except another man, being you. And all men are equal.
So what you're saying is basically, even if any of these land claims go through, which a lot of the natives or the Aborigines, as they're now dubbing themselves, to get sovereignty of the land, they would only have that awarded to them by somebody who was a fraud anyway.
Exactly.
So the label would mean absolutely nothing, and it would just cause more harm in return.
Who are we going to ask for these rights? Who is this power? Are we saying that another man has greater power than another man? And if these people are claiming they've got power, who gives them that power? Have they got some kind of God they're representing? Bring forward this God, this power they're claiming has authority. So far, all I'm finding is another man and woman representing it. I'm not finding anything that is the living creator, that they might call a God, who's come forward to say, yes, they are the people on the land. I say so, this and that. They claim that. You all have to go. They can't do that. I've never seen anyone who can do that. Because to me, it's all nonsense. All this is rubbish. It's all greed and selfishness. Within the tribes, because you happen to have dark skin, because you happen to be part of the lands of these tribes, doesn't mean that you'll have all the wisdom either. I'm very skeptical of all the tribes, as I'm very skeptical of everybody in the system. Everyone's been compromised. And what we've got to look for is the logic of truth in everything, and remove all the lies where we're doing harm to each other. Claiming exclusivity and privilege over land is a lie.
So, let's bring it back for a second into the world of commerce and talk about a UCC1 financing statement and how it would be possible to register that land, or through copyright to yourself. And a lot of people believe that offers protection of assets and protection of collateral and things like that. And you can also copyright your family's assets, and you can register these things in a financing statement to yourself, which in the system would seem like it offers safety. What are your thoughts on the UCC1 financing statement?
All rubbish.
And
garbage.
And what do you mean by rubbish?
Well, who's the power? Who are you answerable to? Who are you asking for your protection? You see, all these lands were invaded by force. It is this force you're going to ask for protection. I find that all total utter nonsense. Why we have to go to these people? Boycott. Turn your backs on the whole thing. Forget it all. No man is master of another man. All men are equal. So why do we need to do paperwork? To who? Is it to your God? Is it to someone who has a higher authority than you? Or is it you are admitting slave status? Because when we file paperwork, we're admitting slave status.
How do we do that?
by accepting there's an authority behind the UCC paperwork. Exactly that. Who? When you go for common law, who is behind common law to give you that power but another man? Is that a force that have put themselves onto high standing like Pharaoh? Or high priests like a pope? Are they not another man? Don't you think the whole thing is just a whole lot of garbage? Look, we're talking about intellectual property here. We're talking about being renters of this intellectual property. And we are a renter when we claim that intellectual property through ownership. I'll give you an example. We want to rent the intellectual property of Harry Potter to market t-shirts and mugs. Now, you know you've got to go and do a contract with the copyright holder who'll take an interest in your affairs in using their intellectual property, and you'll be paying them royalties, fees, before, during and after. So, in the same way, the intellectual property through the birth certificate and other contracts that were created for that person that we are representing, is that intellectual property is owned by the Crown. And the Crown are the authorised representatives of the copyright holder. And so the Crown is the holder in due course of that intellectual property. So when we are talking about ABC 1, 2, 3 in the English language, they own that intellectual property because that is the language of the invaders on these lands. They own that. They own the mathematics and the commerce. That is their system they brought on the lands they invaded. Because they've invaded literally all the lands across Earth now. It is their system. It is not the tribe's natural way of life, which is a gift of life, which we talk about in part 1 and part 2 of The Dream of Life, which you'll find on the YouTube channel, Arthur Love for Life YouTube channel, or loveforlife.com.au website. You'll find them. So when you're looking at UCC, that is intellectual property, and we are renting that. Now that's the same thing. Now behind UCC is money, is commerce. Now all money that exists is just intellectual property. The idea of money is what we're renting. We're not renting the tree or the minerals in the mountains and the soil, all that stuff, because they were raped to produce the material form of that intellectual property, which we now call currency, money. Whether it's gold standard, silver standard, whether it's fiat currency, whether it's money generated by the Federal Reserve Bank or the Reserve Bank of Australia, or whether it is done through forms of legal tender, it doesn't matter how it's created. All this information is intellectual property. And they taught us, because we are the ones who have been conquered. Our ancestors were conquered. We were forced into their education system to represent the intellectual property they taught us to learn. So that we would claim the ABC and the 1, 2, 3. We would claim all the constructs of what's within the languages that they've delivered to us. And so we would run around owning that. And because we're owning that intellectual property, we're paying rent to them. We rent the intellectual property in the forms of the taxes that we pay, the tolls that we pay, the birth certificates, the death certificates, the marriage certificates, everything, the user pay system that we're living in today. This is the mark of our slave status. We're admitting that we are a renter of their intellectual property, and we're giving our life force energy into their world, because that's really all that's going on here, because there is no money. Money doesn't exist.
So they've willingly, through deception...
Yeah, they conned us.
Yeah, conned us into actually giving...
our life energy to their world. Yeah. And that's all that's going on.
Because they can't technically ever... they will never be able to claim that they have authority or they have a higher standing.
Well, what they're claiming they can't bring forward. They can't bring forward a statute to stand in court and represent itself. The statute can't talk. It needs another man to represent that construct.
So how do we come in then with a stance of living creator and stop any force being pushed upon us, you know?
Very difficult.
How do we do that?
It's very difficult, Andy, because the men and women who are acting as the law enforcers and all those acting as politicians and the priests who have now become those who handle the matters of their religion, they're all babies that were compromised. None of them were given full disclosure that they were being scammed to fall into the intellectual property that was owned by the author, which is the grand architect who started this garbage long ago, who Christians call today Satan, which in Greece was called Zeus, who was also known as Moloch and Ahriman, who's also known as Horus and Baal. They've given many names to this guy. But this intellectual property is a fantasy, it's an illusion. It doesn't exist. But they taught us to represent it. And that's because our ancestors were conquered. We're living on conquered lands. And many of us are migrants, or our parents or great-grandparents were migrants that came from conquered lands and transferred to new conquered lands to continue the scam.
Okay, so how do we stop the force coming down on us? Say if a police officer pulls us over to the side of the road and we start to use the stance as living creator, you know, how do we stop him from taking us to jail or doing anything of the like that's, you know, going to bring harm to us?
Well, it's got to come through love. We have to forgive them because they were babies who were compromised and brought up to represent the nonsense that's become them, and they're lost, just as we've been lost and spent so many years destroying everything of the dream of life during the time that we were lost. So while we're waking up, there's no point persecuting and attacking them. What we've got to do is to reach out to them and come into their lives. Take the opportunities they present to you and go into their world and help them. And help them to wake up, to remember who they really are. That's where it's got to come from. We've got to make the whole thing whole. There's no point creating resistance where we're going to create friction and we start having us and them. We've got to get past the us and them. It's got to be about the dream of life as a wholeness. Now, we are the dream of life, and everything we do for each other affects each other. So we willingly have to give up our bodies and not be fighting over our bodies if they want to kidnap it and take it into their world. I actually welcome that opportunity. If they want to come and kidnap this body and take on that responsibility, because I'll make them take on that responsibility, I'll allow them to take that body, because I'm not going to sit there with a gun and fight them and get into a battle for them just to prove the point that they got more force than this man. So they live lives. I mean, what I say before about the fact that we are renters of intellectual property. He's just a renter. The policeman or policewoman is just a renter of the intellectual property. They are also paying the fines and the fees of their curse. They're all cursed. We are all cursed by these lies. The whole system that is the Wonderland, that is the fairy tale, is a lie. The lie is a curse. Every aspect of the lie does harm to the dream of life, does harm to who we are, does harm to everyone who thinks that information, it does harm to everything that we're in contact in the dream of life, be it the ground we're walking on, the mountains, the trees, the plants, the birds, everything gets harmed by that curse, by that lie. So what I was going to get at is that when you go, what I do, if they invite me, the living creator, into their court, I'm not going there to be caught. They're going to court to be caught, but I won't be caught. It's their court, not my court. I will take that as an opportunity to bring them love, to bring them truth, to give them the tools they require to make whole these lies that they've made wrong, to settle and close the matter that they've created. I won't go there to argue over their claims. I'm not going to go to argue over their constructs of their religions. I'm not going to go there to represent a God of their Bible. I'm not going to, because all this is nonsense, it's a lie. I'm not going to go there to argue over the claims that they've made, because it's their claims. It's not my concern, not my matter. What is my matter is that they're my brother and sister of life and they're lost, and I'm there to help them and reach out. So what I do, I look at the opportunity like bringing light, like turning on a torch in a dark cave, and I'm going to enter into their dead world as the living creator for them, to help them recognize the living creator amongst them, because I see them as being dead and lost in the fiction. Everyone representing the nonsense are the dead. They're lost in a dead world. If we remember who we really are, we are the gift of life. So I'm going to bring the gift of life into their dead world. So I go into their court for them to be caught, because the claims they make will be their claims. I'm going to let them take responsibility and enforce them to take responsibility for their claims. I'm not going to claim it. So I'm not going to argue over their claims, no matter what their claims may be. Simply, they have no power over me. They don't have a higher standard than me. I do not acquiesce to their fairy tale world. I'm not going to give my power away to them, which you do when you argue, which is you do when you accept their claim and fight. You're giving your power away to that nonsense. You're giving them permission to take power over you because you've accepted them as your slave master and that you are their slave. When you fill out your UCC paperwork, you're admitting slave status. When you go to the courts, you're admitting slave status.
Do you think also, Arthur, with a lot of these authority figures, do you think, why it's important, like you say, to communicate with them through love and not through anger and not retaliating to their baggage or to their curse, so to speak?
Yeah. Got to forgive them.
We've got to forgive them.
Turn the other cheek.
Mm-hmm.
They hit you. Turn the other cheek.
And this is important because, a lot of these authority figures were probably by many people, through so many people collectively having negative thoughts about them, they would probably take on those thoughts, and it would, do you think that
that gives them energy.
Yeah, that
it gives them energy,
yeah.
and those
and
people
amplifies
and those
whatever.
people who are giving that energy to them, they've got cords that tie it to them, and so it bounces back to them, so they cop it.
Because there are a lot of people, I think, that are probably angry with, that are angry with the system and blame a lot of authority figures, and this basically only enhances or it amplifies the very problem that we want to solve.
Yeah, because it all comes back to taking responsibility. People are angry because they won't take responsibility for their lives. Mm-hmm. They spent their whole lives giving up that responsibility for others, and now they're angry with those who haven't taken the duty of care for them. Mm-hmm. Because see, we go to their shops to get their food, we go to their petrol stations for their fuel, we go to them for all the service they provide. We are their ward of state. We are sucking on the nipples of their private corporations, and then people rise up and complain about those services. Mm. The fact is that we are the responsible. What we're supposed to be doing is to withdraw from the whole thing completely and help them to withdraw until there's no more of this nonsense anymore on earth. No more does it exist in the stream of life. That's what we've got to do here. We have to stop giving our energy to this lie. Stop renting this intellectual property. And that's what I was going back about Harry Potter. While we are using the intellectual property of Harry Potter, we are paying royalties to the royal family, the owner of the copyright holder of Harry Potter. And that makes us a renter of that intellectual property. All renters are slaves. That's what a renter is. We are admitting slave status. We're admitting that the intellectual property has value and merit and is of a higher standing than us. We're accepting that the titles and the statutes behind that have power, and we give it power by acquiescing to those laws. The best thing to do is to ignore it all, as they do to you. They ignore the living man that we are. We also ignore the living dead that they are as well. Then it comes down to, do they want to do harm? So when I go into their court, when they allow me to go into their court, I ask them, are you here to do harm to the living creator of the man that I am? Are you going to take full responsibility for your actions here? Because I come with full responsibility for everything I think, feel and do. Everywhere that I am comes with full responsibility, and everybody who gets involved with me is fully accountable for everything they think, feel and do.
So if everybody was to follow this method of thinking then, and you're saying that you're responsible for everything that you do. You've been talking about also how the system is a lie and it's a curse. But aren't there benefits? So just like a police officer that can be called by somebody in a domestic dispute, someone who's being abused by their husband or wife, or there's the benefits of Medicare and having doctors and things like that. Doesn't the system bring benefits also? Well,
what I would do here, because we're going through the transition to return to kingdom, all these men and women acting under costumes and title, what you do is you strip away all that and bring forward the man they are to be fully accountable for their actions, to help to resolve the issues amongst us. So instead of dealing with a police officer, you're now dealing with another man who's come to help to bring peace where there's chaos. When you bring someone from the medical world, you make sure you make that man and woman fully accountable for their actions. Because they're dealing with another man, in this case the Christian family, where we're fully accountable for everything we think, feel and do, even though we're all compromised. So that is the way to deal with them. There's no point operating under limited liability, because then you're not actually curing any problem that's occurring. And you're leaving it open for the problem to continue and get worse. It's like putting a Band-Aid over a cut, and the cut never gets healed. And the cut gets deeper and deeper and gets wider and becomes a tolerable disease. So it's our attitude and our intention through those attitudes that we can actually make whole, bring wholeness to it. What I'm saying is, give up the law. Give up the system. You're not answering. You don't have to vote. You're not answering to any of these people. Yes, they may seek to harm you. Yes, they may do what they do. But you can put it all back on them. Because as long as you focus, because you're the living creator, as long as you focus on them and make them accountable for all their actions, and do not give them an escape out because you say so, the claims they make live with them. And it can't go anywhere else because you say so. You are living creator. You're giving them every right to create the thoughts that they are creating, and you're giving them every right to empower those thoughts that they've created. But so are you. So then what happens here? You've set them free to allow them to create what they are creating, but you're also setting free to allow what you are creating. So as long as you're not doing harm to them, you make them take responsibility for what they are creating, and don't give them a way out, so that the curse lives amongst them, their loved ones, and their children. And that is how we brought Rome down, and that is how we brought Babylon down, and that's how we wipe this nonsense out every single time, and this is how we're going to wipe it out again. This is the only way to solve it. Through love, through do no harm, and allow them to take full responsibility. Let them. Do not fight for what they're claiming. You take full responsibility for your action, but let them take it as well. If you go in under limited liability, you allow them under limited liability to perform the lie upon you because you've accepted the lie. This means that you have chaos. There's no way to resolve the problem. There's no way of bringing wholeness to the chaos. So someone's got to take a stand and say, enough is enough.
So if someone's making a claim and they can't back their claim, they can't bring forward whatever it is they're claiming, whether it be the law or God or anything. What they're left with is a belief
that they claim.
So we can summarise in that the law is also a belief.
Exactly. It's just made up.
That there is no power behind it. That there isn't the power that they're claiming that stands behind it.
The only power is through our thoughts.
And which is the ownership of that intellectual property if we claim it. That's why they taught us to believe. If you look at the Dream of Light Part 1 and Part 2, we explain that. But generally, the whole idea is to take ownership of those beliefs, because every belief is information. When you claim it, which you do when you go into their court, which is you do when you pay the statute fines that come in the mail, when you operate like that, you're taking on that lie. You're actually you're saying, I'm going to take on that curse and process it. So I'm going to be a slave to perform for the actions of that claim. And I will work through my labour. Either the work of the labour already performed and the fictional dollars that I've earned has to now be paid for that fine. But whatever's happening here, it is our labour, our slave status, that we are giving up for them. We're giving our energy to another man who's claiming to have a higher standing than another man. All those involved in the crown, all the representatives of the crown, but the representatives of the crown, the men and women behind the crown, are also acting as authorised representatives of the owner of the intellectual property. So let's put the responsibility back on them and everyone involved. So when one man comes to you to harm you, everybody involved in the system that allows the harm to happen, make them all accountable by your say-so, by your intention. If they ignore your letter, when you send it back in their language, you're using their dead language to communicate to them, letting them know the living creator is amongst them. If they ignore it, what you still say has power. They cannot dispel the power. The only one who can dispel that power is you if you give it up, which you do when you claim the claims that they've made. When you go to court, they're asking you to come in to take the claim. When they give you the offer in the mail, they're asking you to take that claim. They're asking you to process the lie, process the curse. Now let's take this back. Let's peel this back. These lands were invaded. They brought the curse onto the land, which were the treasure chest they opened up, which is the system, which is all their books. And they brought all the rules and regulations, rituals, procedures, conditions and contracts found inside the religions of Christianity is an example here. Doesn't matter whether it's Roman Catholic or Church of England. It's the same garbage. It doesn't matter what the systems are of democracy or constitution and common law. It's all about man supposedly having power over another man. So this whole thing is a lie, because no man has a natural inheritance to harm another man or to have power over another man. So what we're dealing with here are invaders operating behind the claim that they have authority and power. And they made up a god to get us to worship, so that because they are the authorized representatives of this god, they then manage the affairs of this god, which are the priests. And what these priests did, they divided up all the lands into parish lands, and they put a church on every parish land. And every man on that land is cursed, because while they accept the Christianity, while they accept the common law and the democracy, while they accept the laws of the systems that came off these treasure chests, off these ships, of these invaders, they are the cursed, and they're processing the curse. They're processing the lie. That's why they call it a mortgage, because it's a death certificate. When you take on a mortgage, you're actually admitting that the land that you're standing on is a cursed land, and you're processing the curse on that land. And you have a priest who looks at you as a sinner, because all sinners are the cursed. And that's what all the priests do. They're processing the curse. They're processing the sinners. When you today are dealing with the system under statute laws, you are the sinner, because you are renting their intellectual property. You're processing the lie. That is what's going on here. You are a sinner. You're born in original sin when your parents registered your birth certificate. You're born in original sin when you utter the sounds that come out of your mouth, accepting the Christianity that was forced onto you as a child, and you were not given full disclosure, that they were giving you a fiction to represent. They gave you the thought of God. They didn't actually say to you that the living Creator is in you, as in all of us, and that we're all equal. And that we're not here to harm each other, and to lie to each other through fantasy, and to deceive us into falling into fairy tales where we have to perform as little Mary on behalf of Alice in Wonderland, which is what we do when we represent the person, when we file for the UCC documents, when we go to their court to talk to another man. Who's a magistrate? Is he some appointed power that is a higher standing than you? Or a politician? Why do you vote for this nonsense? When you vote, you're accepting your slave status in a system that's going to rule you, because the system now you're God, and which means all the authorized representatives behind the scene of the system are the ones who are going to administer the power that you've asked them to take responsibility for, because you don't want to take on that power. That's what's going on here. So throw it all in the bin. Let's start burning these buildings down. Let's start ripping it all apart. Let's get rid of it all. Let's tell them to bugger off. We don't need you anymore. But let's not do it out of anger. Let's not do it. Let's remove all the harm. All their buildings are destroyed nature, destroyed life. All their books are destroyed trees. We are all responsible. So the responsibility is in our hand to stop it and heal it. So let's get rid of it. It ain't going to go away of its own accord. We have to get rid of it. So stop giving your energy to it. Stop being the slave. You are a slave when you believe the intellectual property, and you have faith in that intellectual property, and you put your energy into that intellectual property. You are Alice in Wonderland. You're little Mary in Wonderland now, acting as Alice.
Claiming that intellectual property is how you give your power over.
Exactly.
That's right.
And that's why they give you a claim. When they claim that you sped 80 kilometres an hour in a 40k zone.
Or that you voted for him. Or that, this is your common law. You voted for the
system and the power of the people behind the scene to manipulate you, to keep giving your energy to them. Because they need your energy. Without your energy, they've got nothing. Nothing. So you make sure you give the curse back to them. You do not process the curse. But you've got to do it with love and forgiveness. And go into their world and help them. Help them to make right what's been made wrong. Let them know they've got the wrong party. This intellectual property they're claiming is not the living man. I'm the living man. I'm not the representative of that intellectual property they're claiming drove 60 kilometres an hour or 80 kilometres an hour in a 40k zone. And I say to them, go to the owner of that intellectual property, which are the priests. Let them deal with it. Let them process the curse. That's their job. They're here to do God's work, which is their God, to deal with the sinners of their God. Let them deal with the sinners. They are the sinners. Let them process the curse. How simple is that? All we've got to do is withdraw, withdraw, withdraw. Start caring for each other again. All of us start coming together to form these communities, these kingdoms, and we start living for each other again. The 10 Steps of Kingdom that we're soon to release, which is an update of what we wrote back in 2006, 2007, will show you how to do this without ending up in another Waco situation, without being set up to be accused that you're part of some cult or that you're part of some sect. You know, to make sure that you're not set up to be a leader, because all great leaders have no followers. We are not great leaders. None of us are great leaders. What it really means to say about great leaders, the good ones, the ones with their hearts in the right place, are people who realise that we've got to take responsibility for the dream of life, and that everyone else must also take responsibility for the dream of life and share the workload around. So those who claim are good leaders are those who inspire others to take on the responsibility for life and share the workload around as a team effort. That's what it's all about, without invalidating uniqueness. So it's important that we find information that's in the dream of life that does no harm, that guarantees to provide freedom, truth, joy, abundance, and do no harm for all of life, without causing loss of uniqueness to anyone, and without the need for having slaves and rulers. That is key to our freedom. You apply that to any information that comes your way. Look at that information, whether it comes out of science, whether it comes out of the education system through the schooling system, whether it comes out of university, whether it comes out of the experts that are peddling their information for the new age on the internet, whether it comes through the Galactic Federation channeling. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Look at that information and apply the test. How does this information provide freedom, truth, joy, abundance, and do no harm for all of life, without causing loss of uniqueness to anyone, and without the need for anyone to become a slave or a ruler over another man, woman, or child? If that information can do that, you're on the right path. If it can't do it, throw it in the bin and walk away. Don't be Lot's wife. Don't turn your back and keep claiming it. Move ahead. Keep going where the truth takes us. Keep going where the truth takes us. Do not be a victim to the representation of constructs that make you a renter of a dead world. That's what it's all about here.
So what happens if nobody starts claiming these curses, and everybody starts to live as a gift of life or as a gift of love, as you're saying?
Keeping in consideration, I don't mean the con in the word, just mean that our intention is to be present to the presence of the matters that have come into our lives by those who make claims around us. If our intention is to do good and to make whole all things that are made wrong, to remove the curse so that the truth is standing and all lies are fallen down and has no standing anymore, then it's important that we help everybody who's creating a curse to stop creating curses, meaning to stop them creating lies, stop them living the lie, stop them being little Mary representing Alice in Wonderland, stop them performing in the fairy tale that is the system, get them, inspire them to withdraw from the system and to return to nature, to the living world. So from that perspective, Fiona and I are committed to creating a mass exodus out of the system of hell, back to the land, back to nature, back to paradise. So in that way, we need to be in their light. There's no point running away from these people, because we were them as well. We were responsible for them. All the years we spent in the system, feeding it. We've got to now bring to account all that and make it all that we've done whole. So that means let's go back into their world. Let's go back amongst them. You know, I want to get semi-trailer trucks driving through the heart of Sydney, put a band on there with all the music, have hundreds of people wearing t-shirts of Do No Harm and Love for Life, going out there and distributing the Love for Life information. You know, have the band blasting out as loud as possible, causing traffic jams all through the cities. We need to get in there, not to go there and write. We're not going there to stand there and tell them. We want you to make the changes, because we're not passing the buck to them to make changes so we continue being in the system under another guise. What we're doing is confronting the lie and getting rid of the lie by going in there. We are the antibodies. So go in there. Make all the noise we can. While we're creating our gardens, while we're creating the kingdoms that we dream for, we need to go back into the disease and make wholeness in that disease. You don't ignore the cancer spreading in your body, because the cancer will continue to spread until it's killed you. The system is only made up of men and women who are lost. We don't want to allow the growth of the men and women who are lost to kill everything of what remains of the living. So the living have got to return back into the dead, bring light, bring love and truth back into the dead world to help them to see the light of the truth and help them to stop giving their energy to the dead world and make them return to the light. But they've got to take on that responsibility. You can't do it with a gun at their head. You can't create another war to stop a war. That's nonsense. You can't use fear and anger and violence and any of the negative destructive emotion to resolve chaos. You can't use chaos to heal chaos. You have to use wholeness, love, to heal the disease. So we're responsible for all this. So we've got to go. Why we're doing these videos, putting the videos on YouTube, putting my love for life, getting people who might listen to what we have to say, that might resonate truth to them, and get them to change their thinking. So they start changing the world, inspire you to go and start confronting. Confrontation is the most powerful gift of love got. If your intention is to do no harm and to get rid of the harm. Confront, confront, confront. And at the same time, boycott, boycott, boycott the system. Confront the men and women in the system while we boycott the system. Let's withdraw them out. Inspire them to come out. Let's force the white collars to flee Babylon and Rome again. Once they start fleeing, the whole system collapses, because they will all die under their own curse. In the dream that I've created of this living creator, they cannot escape their curse anymore. There's not a man on earth acting under costume and title. Whether it's the Pope, the Queen, they are all cursed, and all the curses come back on them. And they cannot escape it until they make whole this. This vision of the dream that I've created is far more powerful than all their dreams. Everything they do towards Fiona and I amplifies our dream and gives it more power. No matter what they try to do, even if they tried to kill us, it amplifies it. They cannot escape what they have created until they take responsibility and make it whole. Bring them to account.
So how are you actively actually working to get away from the system right now?
As we're doing now.
Are we doing this today?
We're doing it here and now by us forming a relationship with you and Hannah. The way that you guys, we have still compromised the system, how we're going finding food and how we're helping each other through whatever fictional dollars everyone finds to pull together. So together, as this little tribe that we're growing, we're giving gifts and gifts and gifts to the table. We all have created this wonderful table of life, and we bring everything we have to the table, and on that table is everything we share together. No one owns anything on that table anymore. Now the table is the lands we stand on. The table is all the food of nature that's created. Together we're going to share that. So at the moment, while we're still compromised, while enough of us are still waking up, we will use what we can in the system to pursue this path until no longer are we in the system. The remedy comes when there's hundreds of us who come to the table of the dream of life and we willingly give up everything to serve that dream. Then we will have paradise. Then the whole thing is over. The Rome and Babylon will collapse because we say so. Our power, thought, and the life we give to it is far more powerful when it's imbued with our love, with the intention to do no harm, and at the same time that we let them take responsibility for everything they are creating that's a curse. Let them have their curse. Let them process their curse.
So how could somebody who's watching this video start to create a world not of the system and start to work towards creating a paradise again?
Well, for Fiona and I, we've spent 6 years learning the information that's become the body to Love for Life work. I don't expect that they're going to spend 6 years or 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, arguing and debating and doing all the work we've done for all these years, and I mean in the system, totally unpaid because I pulled out of the system. Fiona having to go through hell and back literally every day to keep the whole family together while we're doing this work, trying to keep everything together. So I don't expect anybody to have to do what we've done. However, the information we've created, if you want to learn what we have learned, you can start listening by watching these videos, by reading the articles that we have written, coming and meeting us and sitting down having a chat to us, by the Ringing Cedars books that I've been directing people to have a look at. I must stress the point, there are millions of people who have come out of the New Age movement who've gone and bought the Ringing Cedar books, and they've brought the New Age movement with them, and they're still compromised so severely by fiction. And we're trying to help these people, wake them up, because they're still creating the same problems that they thought they're escaping by bringing the fiction onto the lands of these kingdoms. So what we've done, we've gone to the extent of the purity and sincerity where there is no possible fiction that could come into the dream of the relationships of these tribes that we're creating now amongst each other.
So what about somebody that actually knows the Love for Life information, or has actually come through their own contemplations?
Well, they'll already be doing it.
How could they actively get involved now?
They'll already be doing it if they knew it all, Andy. They'd already be out there doing it right now. They'll do exactly what we're doing. Not in our image, though. They'll have their own unique way of doing it. They'll be taking responsibility for everything they think, feel and do. They'll be confronting everyone else around them no matter where they go, and letting them know that they're going to take responsibility for the lies that they're peddling. They're going to be forming relationships with other men and women who are waking up to start to co-create a kingdom on a piece of land. They may decide to, like many of them who are moving to Australia, there are people moving to Australia to start to fulfill their dreams here. There are many others who are moving to Sydney and other parts. We have a lot of supporters. There's probably 2,000 or 3,000 of us now across Earth. I guess for most of us, because we're all so compromised, there's probably no one out there that's gone as far as I've done, that I know of in the system, that is, who've pulled out like I've done. I don't expect anyone else to do that. And I wouldn't wish anyone else to go through the kind of suffering I've been through. You pay a big price for this. You know, you really suffer for it. And this is not trying to set myself to be a martyr. I'm not a martyr. It's just I don't want to live in a world of lies, and I don't want my children to live in a world of lies, and I don't want to live in a world of harm anymore. I want to put, what my determination is to put an end to the information that caused my parents to do harm to me. I want to put an end to it there so I don't pass it on to my children and everyone else I'm part of. If I can end it there, we've ended it. And I'm asking everyone else to take responsibility to look at the information that causes us to do harm to each other and put an end to it. So that's what kingdoms and kingdomains are all about. So in terms of Love for Life, watch the videos. We are committed to this. We'll keep putting more videos up. Spend your time reading. Look at the debates that we put up on the loveforlife.com.au website. Have a look. Take your time. Come out and visit. If you want to start generating fictional dollars, and many of us come together and we'll go and buy a piece of land to remove the curse of the piece of land, we can do that as well right now. If enough has come together, we'll just go and take a piece of land at that certain point. But we'll let them know what our intentions are. This is all before, all the power's in our hands.
Just so people know, we're actually growing food and preparing many things so that the land of kingdom, when it comes, it's ready to be prepared. Many other ways, because obviously it will take time to grow and things like that. So we're not just sitting here waiting for other people to help us, are we?
No.
We're serious. We're serious about getting all this going.
Because each of you have taken on responsibility to, like we're all fingers to the hand. Each of us is doing something for the benefit of the whole hand. So, and we're all running off doing different things, but our vision, our focus is on what the benefit is to the tribe that we're creating. So everything we're doing through our labour is a gift to the dream of life, and not our energy going back into the system to serve the system, which is what we do when we use the system for everything to make ends meet. And that's explained in some of the annotations we put in the Dream of Life Part 2. We explain some of that. If you actually read the annotations in Part 2, we put that up. Maybe we'll do another video about that, and maybe we can explore that a bit further.
Okay, so you got about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Could you briefly sum up your main passion of what you're saying right now? Or the main intention of what you're saying right now.
To create a living world where our children can have their unique thoughts that come out of nature, and to allow them to expand that with unlimited potential, that there is no restriction on them to do whatever it is they feel inspired to do, knowing that they're so conscious that they'll never do harm to anything, and yet they want to expand the dream of life and do the incredible that has been so shut down of it. To be able to see our children or our great-grandchildren regenerate limbs that have been cut off. To see our children be able to go to the cell levels of their bodies and shift it so we don't have to use aeroplanes anymore. To be able to regrow our bodies so our bodies become bigger and taller. So instead of having to get in a car to go to visit our mate 20 minutes up the road, we can run there in faster than our car can get there. We actually have this incredible power. But we are so shut down, we are so compromised. We don't know who we are anymore. So that's my greatest passion.
Explore our potential.
To remove everything that shuts us down and encourage everything that opens up our potential to expand it. That's what it's all about.
Okay, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. And we don't accept second best. Community.
However long it takes.
Community is very important. We've got to work together to get out of this mess. No point sitting around waiting for someone to come along to do it. We together got to do this together. The power is in our hands together, collectively. It's a team effort. There's no point sitting around waiting and setting our lives up to be ruled by somebody else, by whatever the information may be. We need to be totally accountable for everything we think, feel and do, which means we do not invalidate another man, woman or child with what they're thinking. Meaning we do not rape them, we don't invade them, we don't invade their world and bring them into our world where they got to become in our image, which is what these people did when they invaded all the lands and have been doing in their records of thousands of years. Invading man so that we are under their image, because this is a battle over our brains.
So whatever it takes, we're willing to do it.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do it.
Yep.
Let's get on with it. Let's get on with it.
That's it.
All right.
Get in touch. Get involved.